Saturday night edition of the Anaheim Calling podcast. We're back to discuss two games for the Ducks here for you. We have a 4-2 loss to discuss tonight, the Ducks losing to the Chicago Blackhawks in the first installment of their lengthy road trip, and then a 3-0 defeat on Thursday at the hands of the Dallas Stars. And so the game on Thursday, obviously very notable because the Ducks honored both Corey Perry and Andrew Cogliano in the first period in the two TV timeouts. And I think we should just start there because, first off, neither of these games were particularly of note for the Ducks, the getting shut out on Thursday and then tonight's loss. But the Ducks, I thought, did a really good job in honoring Corey Perry. You look at the video montage that they made for him, but also what we saw on the broadcast in terms of the little surprise they had for him, right? A little presentation in front of, I'm guessing, I don't know who the people in attendance actually were, but I guess friends, family, VIPs, things of that nature.
I believe that it was former Ducks, members of the staff, and then it was a bunch of kids from the Learn to Play program, which Getzlaf and Perry were a big part of funding.
Yeah, and you could just see it, on Corey Perry's face when Henry and Susan Samueli presented him with, the watch, a really nice Hublot watch, and Ryan Getzlaf giving him that giant bottle of wine for his 1,000 games. It was really striking to see Perry just at a total loss for words. I mean, he spoke very little when he went up to the mic, not because he had nothing to say, but just the emotion of it all, I think, just really overcame him, and it was cool to see. I mean, it's unfortunate that it would happen in this context where he's no longer a member of the team. But all in all, I think the Ducks did it right, and it was just a nice night. And also, obviously, Cogliano getting honored as well. So what did you make of it all with Corey Perry's little ceremony there?
There's a whole lot of kind of emotions and thoughts and feelings going on in my head about it. I think, first off, it felt almost bittersweet. So the first video I think I saw where it kind of hit me, it was like, oh crap, it's here, was when he was interviewed. It was, I think, the day before. It was after he took the practice skate, or maybe it was the morning skate. And I think it was the morning skate, and they had a little press junket for him. And one reporter asked him basically, did you ever think that you would be in this situation where you would be visiting Honda Center as a visitor, and basically the Ducks have done, you saw the Ducks do all the videos for the 07 Cup team, and did you ever think that you would be in the position getting one of those videos? And Perry kind of goes on this nice little kind of story about how fast time goes and how he found a jersey, and just he's very proud of everything, but he's like, no, I never thought that I would be in this situation. And it was at that moment that it just kind of hit me that we're here. He's coming back, not as a Duck. Now, granted, he didn't play, but it almost hit me of like, why is this happening? Why this happened? So I'll get to that in a sec, but I think overall on the whole, because I think the big thing to focus on, one of them is the night, and I think the Ducks did a really good job of having Perry there. One of the things that I want to mention that was brought up to me as one of the potential reasons, because some people might think that why did the Ducks do it now? Why didn't they wait till when the Stars came on April 1st? There's a couple things I think at play that are important here, and that's April 1st, I believe, is Fan Appreciation Night. So I don't believe the Ducks would have wanted to honor him also on Fan Appreciation Night. And there's also the potential where if the Dallas Stars do not make the playoffs, Corey Perry's on a cheap deal. And it's no guarantee that he's going to still be on the Stars come after the trade deadline. He may get moved to team in a playoff spot. And now, granted, Dallas is in a playoff spot right now with 56 points, but they're only 4 points in the playoffs. So if for whatever reason they fall out of it, he may not be a Star. So that may be a reason, because supposedly Perry requested to do the video on this night. And so I think the tribute was nice. It didn't, my one complaint with it is it didn't feel like it was that extraordinary in terms of what they put together for him. It almost, in a weird way, almost felt like it should have been a pregame video. if that makes
Yeah.
any sense, because it was almost too short. But I will say they kind of allowed the fans to really kind of give him the ovation, and it did not stop. And the only reason why it did stop was play continuing. And the linesmen were looking up and really kind of let it keep going before starting play. And I was actually in attendance for this game. And so it was really nice being there. And I actually was not sitting too far away from the box that Perry was in. So I was able to kind of look up and see him. And it was a really nice night to kind of show your appreciation for everything he did. Because, I mean, almost 1,000 games, a Hart Trophy, one of the two faces of the franchise in probably the most successful period in Ducks history from 05, 06 until when he was moved. I don't think that there's any other way to do it. By the way, Fire Carlisle put in our Twitch chat that they should have done what the Sharks did with Pavelski tonight, where they did it all pregame and honored him there. And it allows kind of more time for it to breathe. I think, granted, it's harder because Perry wasn't playing, and I think that is kind of the shame here, but also it's, in some ways, even though Perry really wasn't suspended that much, it is kind of poetic justice that he can't play in the game because he was suspended in a weird kind of way. And then the ovation for Cogliano was also nice. Kind of a bummer that he doesn't get his own kind of return only for him. But after looking at all the videos that come out, because the pregame ceremony was really nice, or not the pregame, the ceremony that they did in private was really touching. The fact that you had guys like Teemu Selanne there, guys like Todd Marchant, guys like Beauchemin, guys that are within the organization that played with Perry and were there with him. It was nice. And Henry and Susan Samueli being able to give that to him. And you can clearly tell how much the organization meant to Perry when he gets up to talk after everyone kind of says a little bit about him. And he's kind of at a loss for words and just says thank you. And it was in that moment, and the moment where Kent French interviewed him also, where it kind of hit me. And it's just like all of the emotions from before the season when this came out kind of came back to me. A little bit of anger, a little bit of frustration, because at the end of the day, the reason for them buying him out, and I know that people will say he wasn't good, he wasn't worth his contract, but for you to buy out a player, the main reason why you should buy him out is if it makes your team better, if it helps you propel into a better situation the next season, if it puts you in a better spot. And I don't think there's any way you can look at the Ducks in the standings right now and say Corey Perry makes them worse than where they are right now. And now, granted, maybe you can say it hurts the developments of the kids because it takes up a spot, but it's not as if they are being barn burners right now. It's not as if there haven't been spots open due to injury. I mean, right now you have both Jakob Silfverberg and Troy Terry not in the lineup. And also, you could have had Perry on the fourth line. And now, granted, I'm getting into coulda, shoulda, woulda over a Nick Deslauriers, because it's hard not to look at the ins and outs of this team this past year and see Corey Perry is the only name out, Nick Deslauriers is the only name in. And I know that's a bit of an oversimplification because of the wings that they're on, but essentially that's the choice that the Ducks made if you look at the roster. That's the only player out, and that's the only player in from a pure transaction perspective. And so it just feels... My biggest gripe is that he didn't get 1,000 games in a Duck sweater, because that's such a... At the end of the day, all it is a number, but it's kind of what it means, and it means that you have both Getzlaf and Perry hitting this milestone in the same season, both of them doing it together. They were the twins. And it's just kind of seeing Getzlaf and Perry up there and seeing Perry not on the ice with him, seeing Perry in a Dallas sweater. It's just, it feels like as a fan, and I know I a lot of times try to check my emotions and really focus on kind of numbers and putting that aside because that doesn't provide good analysis. But as a fan and emotionally, it just feels like we were cheated. So
yeah, well, I think that Corey Perry will have another night for
yes,
himself when they retire his jersey number. So this isn't like the last opportunity they'll ever have to do this. And I think it was just right. I don't know if an entire night for a guy who's still active, and
fair.
I think those kind of nights are usually for something where a jersey is being retired, something to that effect.
I don't know if I would say the entire night, but just a pregame, a little bit longer of an appreciation.
Well, I think he got exactly what was needed in that moment, the kind of more intimate
Yeah,
moment with basically those closer to the team, ownership,
true.
GMs. I thought that that was really nice, and then getting the ovation from the fans. At the end of the day, what more do you really need? And I thought that it was just well done. And eventually, we will have a Corey Perry night where his number 10 goes up in the rafters.
Yes.
That I am very, very sure of. Now,
Yes.
pivoting to that night as a whole, though, and we should also briefly mention that Andrew Cogliano had a nice ovation as well.
Yes.
His was a lot less emotional, obviously, just his career arc not nearly the same with the
Yeah.
Ducks. But yeah, so looking at this game, though, really the big news going into the matchup against Dallas is that Ricard Raquel would return after 6 games of sitting out with a wrist injury. And so he would go on a line with Lundestrom and Silverberg. We would still see Sprong up on a line with Getzlaff and Henrique. So overall, the Ducks lineup looked like it was finally kind of forming and getting back into shape. And then all of a sudden, you see Silverberg have to leave that game. So it's just kind of unfortunate the way things are shaking out for the Ducks. Not to get too far ahead here, we would see that in the first period where Denis Gurianov, who may just turn into an all-star every time he plays the Ducks.
Yeah.
I don't really know a whole lot about him just overall, but he would get the first goal of the night halfway through the first period, getting a really nice power play goal that Stars going cross ice, really quick cross ice seam pass from Rupe Hintz over to Gurianov, who would just wire it home. Really, I thought just overall, though, on the night for the Ducks, they didn't really show a lot of energy. There wasn't a lot of offensive spark until really the very end of the game, I thought. I thought that at the end, they pressed a lot harder. But this was a game that needed some kind of boost, especially after they would go down 2-0. Once again, Alexander Radulov would really, I mean, the Stars would catch the Ducks on a really bad change on the power play. Ben Bishop gets a cleared pass or a clearing attempt, and then from there he just wires it up the ice. He's able to do that. Usually, goaltender stretch passes aren't really that effective, but on this one, because the Ducks were so slow to change, especially in a period where they have the long change, the Stars were able to get a great chance out of it. Tyler Seguin initially gets stopped by John Gibson. The rebound comes back out, though. Seguin then plays it over to Radulov, who's able to bury it home. That would make it 2-0. And at that point, it just felt like the Ducks were just totally lifeless. And Nick Delorier, who you just kind of bagged on, tried to spark his team a little bit, dropping the gloves against a giant in Jamie Alexiak.
Yeah.
I thought he acquitted himself nicely.
Yep.
He gave the whole let's go to the crowd. I think, they did an interview on Fox Sports with Nick Delorier. Ali Lozoff interviewed him outside of Gray Park Ice, and I think he really takes to heart the role that he plays for this team, and I think that he really appreciates the opportunity. And anyway, just to see a guy basically eat knuckle bones to the face for a living, I don't know. I just tip my hat to that kind of stuff because it's not an easy job at all. And look, we can debate all day how much that actually affects the game, affects the team. But the Ducks did have a pretty decent second period in the moments where it was played at 5-on-5. They attempted the Stars 16-8, outchanced them 9-3 and 3-2 from high danger locations. So it's not as if the Ducks played this really poor game. It's just they couldn't really penetrate the defensive structure, I thought, of the Dallas Stars. They couldn't really get anything super dangerous, again, until that very end where they started to press. And in the last 5 minutes of the game, in a game where I thought Daniel Sprong was one of this team's best players, not just best forwards, Daniel Sprong would be nailed to the bench, and the Ducks with the extra attacker trying to break it out of their own zone. Andre Kasha tries to go forehand, backhand, kind of needlessly in this situation.
Mm-hmm.
He's got 2 guys on him. That play was just never going to work out. The Stars are able to steal it, and then Hintz just fires it into an empty net, and that would put it away 3-0. So, yeah, just this game overall, I thought from an Anaheim perspective, not a whole lot to write home about. Manson and Lindholm did post some decent numbers, but what are some of your takeaways from that game overall?
I think at 5-on-5, it was a fairly even game. And so up on the screen right now, I have the kind of game flow type chart with a cumulative expected goals from Money Puck, and they have it at 1.72 to 1.37 at 5-on-5. And so it was a pretty kind of slow game from that perspective, where both teams had their defensive structure at 5-on-5 and kind of played within it. It was really hard for people to kind of find time and space to create chances. The issue is, now I have all situations up, is the Ducks penalty killing, and in turn the Ducks power play, because the Ducks, I believe, had 2 power plays, 4, and so I will switch it now to natural stat trick. Yeah, they had 2 power plays, 4 and 3 against, and Dallas scored 2 power play goals. The Ducks weren't able to capitalize, and we talk about 5-on-5 a lot with various different things, and now granted, shot attempt wise, the Ducks were fine. The issue was a lot of them were to the outside, because Dallas was really kind of containing them and pushing them outside, and that's where the shot quality versus shot quantity debate becomes so important, is that the Ducks got a lot of shot attempts, but they weren't really high quality. None of them were really that great of looks. But in these types of games where it can be a bit of a slow event type of game, it's a bit of a slog. This is exactly kind of what happens in the middle of the season, in the middle of the week, where there's not a whole lot of energy from either side, to be honest. That's when your penalty killing and power play is most important, because in games like this where the overall expected goals is under 2 at 5-on-5 for each team, that's a situation where one power play goal can make a huge difference in the end result. And that's what we saw. And now, granted, some people may say one of those goals for Dallas was scored on a bit of a phantom penalty. But at the end of the day, mistakes are going to be made from the refs. That's bound to happen.
I mean, yeah. So you're referring to, for those who didn't see, the high sticking penalty issue to Max Jones, and looking at the replay, it was pretty obvious that Roman Polak was the one who actually was at fault there. I would push back on that a little bit, though. This game wasn't really. I mean, the Stars are a very good defensive team.
I agree.
They rank 5th in the NHL in expected goals for percentage at 5-on-5 on Money Puck, and so this isn't like some random team.
No.
This is the way that they play. They make you grind to a halt, and the Ducks just weren't really able to break through that. Whereas Dallas was able to take advantage of opportunities and create opportunities. And so what's really unfortunate about this game is that if you look at the expected goals numbers, it's 3.79 to 1.5 in the entire game. And this was a really good performance from John Gibson. He played really well, made a lot of saves.
Yes.
And that's something that we've been critical of, is that, hey, John Gibson hasn't been stealing games for Anaheim. This was a game where he played to that level, and they just weren't able to return the favor in any way.
And getting back to that 3.9, that's a 2-goal. That's about 2 goals around there between 5-on-5 and special teams. So it's not as if that the Ducks penalty killing was outstanding and the Stars got a goal or 2 out of luck on a power play. That's kind of my point here, is that even though the Ducks did take that phantom penalty, you got to kill it off, and you got to be better on the penalty kill. Like
you're allowed to respond, as opposed to keel over and just whine about it.
Exactly. And so that's the issue in this game. This game came down to special teams.
Yeah, it did. And at 5-on-5, the Ducks just weren't really threatening enough to kind of overcome that. That's kind of the issue. And again, not really the bigger issue, but part of the issue to me is that in a situation where the Ducks could have put their most dangerous players out there, their most threatening players out there, aka Daniel Sprong, who was part of that in that game, he didn't play in the last 5 minutes, which again bewilders me, because I don't really know what he did to deserve being benched in the last 5 minutes. It still completely baffles me. If you look at the numbers on that night, they're absolutely striking when you look at what happened with Daniel Sprong on the ice for Anaheim. So if you look at the shot attempts with Daniel Sprong out there, 24 attempts for, 3 against. Scoring chances, 13 chances for, 3 against. From high danger locations, 2-1. He had 5 shot attempts on his own. He did that in 13:40 of time on ice. So this whole notion that, he's not good enough defensively, or that he's this big minus, I mean, we haven't seen it so far in his call-up, and in a game where they desperately needed offense, it just made no sense for me to see him not play at all in those final minutes. So that was really kind of my only bone to pick with how Dallas Eakins handled that. end of the game. The other thing that I didn't really understand is why they didn't use a timeout, and also why Isaac Lindstrom is taking big faceoffs down the stretch in the offensive zone. The Stars had an icing, and Lindstrom is the one taking that draw. I mean, you have Adam Henrique. Again, I still don't understand why Adam Henrique just isn't even taking faceoffs anymore.
Yeah.
So,
well, Isaac
anyway.
Lindstrom on the whole has not been fantastic since
He hasn't. He was. I mean, the game that game again was just kind of goes to show how he will ebb and flow depending on who he's playing with.
Yeah.
And so when he's between Raquel and Silfverberg, he's fine. But when you replace Silfverberg, let's say with the Max Comtois, and everything just kind of hits the fan.
Yeah.
So
and just so everyone knows, on the night, Isaac Lundstrom, 0.09 expected goals for, 0.81 against for 10% expected goals for percentage. 5 shot attempts for, 15 against. So not that great on the whole for the night. I believe one scoring chance for, 9 against. So not really helping the Ducks out too much there. And we forgot to mention though, Jakob Silfverberg was ruled out for the game, and Max Comtois came in for him.
Yeah, no, that happened early on, and just really a tough break. Anyway, we will discuss that. We're going to go into our first intermission here, and we will be right back. Okay, back from the first break. Someone was complaining the other day that we should say intermission instead of break.
Well, you just did it.
I did, just to appease, but then I said break immediately after. I'm just wondering why. Like, what difference does it make? Anyway.
It's because hockey intermissions, 2 intermissions.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's
synergy
fair.
There.
But yeah, Jakob Silfverberg, big blow to Anaheim.
Yeah.
Has to leave the game.
Yep. I mean, one of their best players. I mean, we saw it when Raquel, and this was kind of part of the game, is that the Ducks, they weren't able to really create a whole lot. And I think part of it is missing Jakob Silfverberg. And we saw it when they were missing Rickard Raquel. When one of those two is out of the lineup, they really just lack the creativity and the skill to be able to create good chances.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you disagree with that necessarily, but
are you talking about Silfverberg?
Yeah.
Yeah, Silfverberg is just like an anchor to me in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
Not he brings people down, but he just kind of settles everything down.
Yeah.
Everyone's playing in the right spot. He's able to get pucks on net, win battles, do the things that, quite frankly, a lot of guys in this team are not doing right now.
Yep.
And so, yeah, and should also make a note that it was announced yesterday that Silfverberg is withdrawing from the All-Star game due to the expected birth of his second child. So that's obviously exciting news for him. A very good reason to not go to the All-Star game. Yes. I mean, still got the nod. That's the biggest thing. Mm-hmm. Will get the time off. And so in light of his injury, didn't play tonight against Chicago. So in light of all that, I think it's probably a pretty, although those on Twitter, I got pushback on that saying, well, just so you know, when you have a kid, you don't sleep much. You don't really get to rest much. I'm like, yeah, fair enough. But regardless, he won't be subjecting his body to the punishment of NHL games in any way. So that's still a positive.
Yeah, exactly. And we should make note that the person that is filling the spot of Jakob Silfverberg is Max Pacioretty of the Vegas Golden Knights. So no Ducks on the Pacific All-Star team. No Ducks.
And honestly, is it that surprising?
No. The only thing that I would say about it is that
there should be someone from each team.
No, I don't really care about that. I think Cam Fowler could get the nod, and I think it would make sense. And they could use another defenseman, although they just had Quinn Hughes voted in.
Well, it's just the way they made their format, where if you're not part of the guys that get in first, then you have to be voted in. So it's kind of like a popularity contest. And you have to get voted in regardless, but there's a set of options.
Wait, did the last man in affect who took the spot?
I believe so. I believe so. I could be totally wrong about that.
Yeah, I think they just named the player who is a replacement player.
Well, Max Pacioretty probably should have been in the first time around.
Yeah, he was the last man in vote, but I don't know.
45 points in 47 games for him.
Quinn Hughes is the one who won the last man vote, so now there's 2 defensemen on the team.
Well, I think it's pretty fitting of this Duck season because no one has really been an all-star.
Yeah.
I mean, you could I mean, there's definitely a strong argument for Cam Fowler, but John Gibbs, like the guys who are draws who are bigger names have not really been all-stars. I mean, John Gibson hasn't been at all up to his standards. Ryan Getzlaf, you could argue maybe should be in there. but it's just there's no one that's really running away with it. So
Yeah, Derek
kind of
Grant.
tough for the fans. Derek Grant. Yeah, get Derek Grant in there. What the hell?
Too late.
We're just getting it wrong here.
Yeah. But, yep.
Yeah, and then going into tonight's game against Chicago, a couple notes. This is the biggest one that had the biggest effect in Jake Rudolph's life. Troy Terry assigned to a conditioning stint in the American Hockey League. So
weird.
Healthy enough to play. There were reports that he was skating with the team, that he was basically good to go. We talked about this on the last podcast, and instead he's going to spend us a few games in the AHL.
Yeah.
What do you make of that?
Makes sense. I mean, he's been out for what, 6 weeks, 7 weeks?
Makes sense. You were saying how much it did make sense on Twitter the other day.
No, I didn't. No. So no. Let me explain.
You flip flopped.
No, I did not flip flop. You misunderstood
Okay.
what I was saying on Twitter.
Right.
No, it makes sense to send him down to get him conditioning and to get him in some games. The thing that doesn't make sense is the reasoning why this is called a conditioning stint. Because a conditioning stint, for instance, is used on a player who has been injured for a significant amount of time, and typically it's for players that require waivers, so it allows you to send them down to the minors without them having to go on waivers, or a guy like, for instance, Comtois last year who wasn't eligible for the AHL but could be sent down on a conditioning stint and play a couple games down there. And so it allows you to send them down to the AHL on that, and it's only for a specific amount of games, and then they have to be called back up.
Yeah.
And I believe that there's no cap benefit for a...
Well, that was your objection, is that why in this manner? Not so much why are they sending him down, period, but just
Correct.
Why using this mechanism.
Correct. Why not just send him down straight up?
Well, what's weird is that if you look at Cap Friendly, he's listed on LTIR. Troy Terry is.
No, I think it's LTI conditioning.
Yeah, let me double check that.
I have it open.
So I mean, what I find odd about that is why he doesn't just go straight to the Ducks.
Yeah, it's LTI conditioning loan. It's technically listed on. So I guess maybe the cap hit gets covered by LTIR then.
There has to be some type of fringe benefit. There just has to be,
because
that we're just not
from a pay
for
perspective. I also, because he's on a 2-way deal, so if they just sent him down, they'd be saving hard money. Whereas this way they're not. I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah,
it doesn't make sense.
It's too much to understand.
Yeah,
or it's also not that important.
If someone has figured it out, let me know.
Please let us know. Please let us know.
I feel like I have a decent understanding of the CBA, and this is a weird one for me.
Well, look, so he gets sent down. He doesn't go straight back to the NHL, which I think that's the strangest part about all this, because he played in every game this season. He's having a good season per Jake Rudolph, having a positive impact at 5-on-5.
The Ducks are better. The Ducks are better with him on the ice than without him.
Yes. And with their elite 5-on-5 numbers.
His 5-on-5 numbers are actually good. I will prove it in a bit.
No, you don't have to prove it. Like we'll take your word for it. Good. But So given all of that, why not bring him back to the team?
I think the reasoning there is, the injury was a fracture below his knee. So I think you want to see how it fully reacts before in the AHL, before having him play in the NHL. And also they're going on a road.
You'd rather him get re-injured in the AHL than the NHL.
Well, I also think that this actually is something that just came to me. I think that this is an important piece of the puzzle here. The Gulls are playing at home, which means he can go back up to Anaheim and get treatment if anything happens, depending on how his knee reacts. The Ducks, on the other hand, are going on a long road trip.
Yeah.
So
that's probably it. I think if they were on a homestand, he would probably be staying in the lineup.
Boom.
Going straight back in. But who knows?
Solve the puzzle. There you go.
Well, no, that's just a possible alternative explanation. We don't actually know.
Boom.
Regardless, I mean, if Troy Terry was having this great, season where he's posting all these stats and looking, dominant, does he go to the AHL, you think?
I think he goes to the AHL due to the injury no matter what.
Well, that's a fine theory. I don't think Troy Terry's been all that great this season. He hasn't really done much from an individual perspective. And supposedly he has these great passing metrics, which we don't actually have.
Hey, one game
really out there.
I tracked one game.
Jake tracked one game.
Need to do it more.
Anyway, I kind of see it, though, just on the flip side. I see it as a bit of a vote of confidence for Daniel Sprong, because you could argue that part of the reason Daniel Sprong didn't start the season in Anaheim is because Troy Terry and him kind of occupy that same spot. And so if Daniel Sprong had been playing terribly and maybe just was looking totally out of place, like supposedly he did in training camp, maybe Troy Terry gets funneled back into the lineup a little faster. Sprong playing well gives them a little more flexibility, bringing Terry back.
Want to get into this now or get into the Chicago game?
What? Get into what?
What the lineup should be.
Oh, well, let's do Chicago.
All right.
So we're going to kind of fly through this one because it wasn't really a great effort from the Ducks. So looking at the lineup going into tonight, not really a whole lot of changes, minus the fact that you once again see Jakob Silfverberg out of the lineup. We would see Max Comtois get up into that second line slot, and I think it's time to see Max Comtois get a little time in San Diego, because he's just not looking real impactful out there. The numbers don't really tell much of a different story. He was on a line with Lundestrom and Raquel tonight. To be fair, Dallas Eakins put the lines into a blender, and I would actually agree with this instance of him doing that because the Ducks just look so lost overall. It's really befuddling how this team has these performances on a semi-regular basis.
Yeah,
where just nothing is clicking.
I think part of it is you have the development of the kids happening, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. This is the excuse I'm getting tired of, is that fair.
These kids, right? These 21 to 22-year-old players, they're not like teenagers coming out of junior. They played pro hockey. Fair. They were all kind of in pro hockey last year. I think it's just that these kids are not really there yet. It's not so much that they're kids. Yeah. Anyway, but it's not just that either. I mean, I thought Fowler and Goodbranson, even though their numbers were good tonight, I thought this was one of their worst games.
Yeah. I think
Lindholm and Manson's, again, their numbers were not terrible, but they also didn't look great.
Manson was on the ice for 3 goals against, I believe?
Yeah, and so it was just kind of one of those games where it seems like across the board, everyone struggled. I mean, even John Gibson allowed a goal early that he will want back many times over.
Yep.
And it was interesting because the first goal of the night would come from the Ducks. Max Jones would give the Ducks an early lead on what was a pretty nice setup overall. I mean, Eric Goodbranson dumps the puck in, and then Andre Kasha is able to steal it behind the net, and he funnels it over to Max Jones, who finishes it. And those two starting to form some chemistry. So we've talked about those guys as kind of being similar players, and if they can develop some kind of chemistry there, that's a big benefit for Anaheim moving forward. But then immediately after that, or I should say not long after that, John Gibson would make a series of really solid saves. One on Patrick Kane, who, even though it looked like a bad angle shot, I don't think there's a bad angle shot for Patrick Kane on the ice.
Yeah, no.
And it was from in tight. He got his kind of shoulder on it. And then there was a tip in front that Gibson somehow kept out, even though it changed directions about twice. And so you're thinking, okay, John Gibson had a great game against Dallas, and he's starting strong against Chicago. Overall, the Ducks didn't seem that disjointed, at least to start in those first few minutes. But then it kind of started falling apart. You would see the Blackhawks come down on a rush, on a 2-on-1. It's a turnover at center ice, which you, of course, never want to see. And it was Cam Fowler who wasn't able to corral that puck again. I thought that he didn't have his best game. Taves comes in on the left wing and just fires it through the 5-hole of John Gibson. And yeah, it's a 2-on-1. It's a tough situation no matter what. But I'm sure John Gibson thinks he should have stopped that puck.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, there's just no way in hell he doesn't think that. And rightfully so. He's more than capable of stopping that shot. And then to make matters worse, in the second period, the Blackhawks would then take the lead, just sweeping a rebound into the net. Dominik Kubalik, who I honestly had not heard of before tonight. I'm going to be open and honest here. Had not heard about him. Patrick Kane is able to sweep into the zone, gets a backhand on John Gibson, and then from there, Kubalik cleans up the rebound. And this is a trend we've seen with Anaheim recently, just not really doing a great job cleaning the front of their net. And that would be Goodbranson and Lindholm just looking a little MIA on that play.
Yeah.
After that, Dominik Kubalik, once again, what is it with these French guys and just having the best game of their lives against the Ducks? I don't know. Maybe it says something about the Ducks or these players. I don't know. Maybe a little bit of both. But once again, the Ducks just looking really disjointed in their zone. And this was the play I think that you were referring to, where the rebound gets left out in front, and Josh Manson basically just watches Kubalik bang it into the net. It was a rebound from a Duncan Keith point shot. So that would make it 3-1. In the third period, Ricard Raquel would score on one of the prettier goals I think we'll see from the Ducks this season. A nice play overall. It starts in there at their own blue line. Hampus Lindholm just shoots it up to Max Comtois, who then slams on the brakes, sends it cross ice over to Isaac Lundestrom, who I thought the nicest part of this play was Isaac Lundestrom's pass, because he immediately one touches it over to Ricard Raquel. So that tells me he knew he was already scanning the ice for options before he got the puck, which I think is the sign of a good playmaker. If before you get the puck, you already know what to do with it. And so he gets it over to Raquel, who is denied on the first shot. I should also mention Robin Leonard was very good tonight. But he's denied on the first shot, and then he bangs home the rebound. That would make it 3-2, but it just wasn't enough, it would seem, because not long after that, the Blackhawks were able to extend their lead again, and this one was kind of befuddling. I mean, Alex DeBrincat just brings it into the zone, gets it back to Ole Mata, who gets all of that one-timer, gets it through a crowd. John Gibson isn't able to see it. I think he's partially screened by Josh Manson there, and that would make it 4-2 and basically end the game. So just kind of an odd one. I didn't think the Ducks played particularly well, even though the numbers aren't necessarily terrible and in favor of Chicago. But just overall, I don't think they showed a whole lot tonight.
No, and I think the other thing an important piece of this conversation is that it's not as if Chicago is this juggernaut.
Well, yeah. So and that's something that we talked about in the Columbus pod, is that we should do probably a better job of mentioning the opposition. So Dallas is this stingy defensive team that's loaded with veteran talent up front, and that has great goaltending and Ben Bishop, who's in the running for the Vezina. Right. That's a complete playoff team. That's a good team. Chicago is one of the worst teams in the NHL, or maybe not worst teams in the NHL, but they're a bottom half team, right? This is not a team that's going to scare you. They're very poor defensively, and offensively they have some weapons, but they're just not impressive overall. In
terms of expected goals for percentage, they're 28th in the league, so they are slightly below the Ducks. The Ducks are 27th. And they're really the only saving grace for the Blackhawks is they have one of the best power plays in the league. That's about it. They allow the second most expected goals in the league. They allow the third most shot attempts against in the league. So this is a team that allows chances and allows shot attempts against. So this is not exactly a team where if you look at it and say, well, the Ducks were even with them, that should be a good thing. This is a team that the Ducks should be outplaying from a 5-on-5 perspective, getting more chances. Well,
in theory, the opportunity is there to outplay them, but looking at the Ducks' own results in this context.
True.
Well, and that's the thing, right, is that we talk about these games where the Ducks should be doing certain things. Look, you could argue, hey, the Ducks are ahead of the Blackhawks in some of these categories, but the Ducks are still in the bottom tier.
Well,
right.
One thing that pops into my head as I was watching this game, and I mentioned it on Twitter, that it really hit me that Alex DeBrincat drafted the same exact draft as Sam Steele and Max Jones in the second round. So only 5.
That was 2016?
I believe so. 5 to 6 picks after Sam Steele. If you had to redo that draft, the Ducks have those 2 first rounders. You want Sam Steele and Alex DeBrincat. And it really just kind of shows a couple things that essentially NHL teams really focus too much on size. And another thing is that I think the Ducks have drafted well. I think no doubt about that. But I think at this point, management and the way that people talk about the drafting results is a little bit overblown. I don't necessarily know if it's as
well. It's because the metric for success of a draft pick is really kind of all over the place.
Yes.
So Max Jones and Sam Steele are in the NHL, so ergo it's a good pick. But would they be in the NHL if this team was contending?
Probably
right?
not.
There's just, we're coming up on our second break here, but I'll break this down. I'm just going to recap the last 10 picks in that 2016 draft. In the first round, I should say. 20th, Dennis Cholowski. Julian Gauthier, German Rubtsov, Henrik Borgstrom, Max Jones at 24, Riley Tuft, Tage Thompson, Brett Howden, Lucas Johansson, Trent Frederick, and Sam Steele.
Yeah,
so maybe the Ducks did all right in considering that crop of players.
The only thing is Alex DeBrincat wasn't that mix, so you can say the same thing about all those teams.
That's the thing is that everyone missed the ball. And look at the guys immediately ahead of DeBrincat. You have Yegor Korshkov, Tyler Benson, Rasmus Asplund, Andrew Peak, Jordan Kyrou, Pascal Laberge, Libor Hayek, Adam Masterin, and then you have Alex DeBrincat.
Yeah.
I mean, I just threw out a bunch of names. I don't know who half these guys are.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that, let me know if you agree with this, because this is kind of where I was going with this conversation, is that it's interesting because Chicago's 5-on-5 numbers aren't great. And there's a whole lot that they still need to do. And so I think them and the Ducks are in similar spots right now. I think what Chicago has going for them is they have guys on their team that seem like they have a bit of the higher skill, though, in them. Granted, the Ducks have Zegras and they have Doc, but they have the likes of Dylan Strome. They have the likes of an Alex DeBrincat. And I don't know if the Ducks have guys within their system. Maybe Troy Terry has the skill level of those guys, but he hasn't shown that from a production perspective. I don't
think he has a skill of either of those guys.
Probably not. Maybe
respectfully.
I mean, probably
Dylan Strome.
True.
He's had a weird career, but he was the top pick.
No, I know.
And DeBrincat should have been drafted a lot higher.
True.
I mean, Troy Terry's a 5th-round pick.
True.
Let's not forget that.
True.
Okay, let's jump into our second break here because this is going to be a bigger topic, and we'll be right back. Okay, so back from our second break, we've talked about the two games. I don't think either game was really impressive from an Anaheim perspective. So you had a couple of things you wanted to add, though, about Troy Terry. So why don't you go ahead here?
Oh, we're doing the Troy Terry thing now?
Well, I don't know. You were talking about Troy Terry.
No, I actually wasn't.
I had to put a little. I had to put a lid on it just so we could get our ads in.
Get in the second break. No, all I was gonna say on that point basically was that you look at Chicago and you can see the difference in skill.
Yes.
And I think that's the important piece of this puzzle.
To that point, yes, I 100% agree, is that even though, like I said, Dylan Strome is a guy who's had a weird career, he was once a highly touted prospect, and they basically traded low. They bought low on him just to kind of take a home run swing. Alex DeBrincat, I mean, he's a guy who should have gone higher, and they picked him up. Kirby Dach was the 3rd overall pick this past draft. They have Adam Boqvist, also a lottery pick, who's turned into a really nice defenseman. So you have, and I could go further down the list into their system, but you have the makings of kind of a next wave there, and a next wave that's making an impact.
Yes.
Right. And
that's
so
the key.
The Ducks will just have to see. But yeah, because again, Alex DeBrincat is in the same draft as those guys. So this idea that just because of their age, we can't be expecting them to be good yet, that's just not true.
Yeah.
There are guys who are thriving by that age. Now, those guys tend to be really good, to be sure, but the Ducks, this whole notion that, they're draft mavens, I think generally they're able to extract NHL players out of the draft, but we shouldn't confuse that with, they're drafting NHL elite talent, stars, out of the draft. And to be fair, that's hard to do for any team. Yeah. I just think that the perception out there is that, Anaheim is this amazing drafting franchise, and I would say they're a very good drafting franchise, but I think that reputation has kind of been unfairly put on them, because if you were to ask their scouting staff, I don't think they would tell you, we're picking stars left and right. They would say, we're happy with our picks, we're happy with our evaluation.
Yeah.
Totally different.
One thing I do want to note is I believe Chicago is 1 or 2 years ahead of the Ducks in terms of being bad, in terms of getting higher draft picks. And I think that is important in this conversation, that when you add one more draft, it allows you to add one more skilled player into your lineup 1 year earlier. And so that's kind of part of this, but that doesn't, you still have Alex DeBrincat. You still have guys like that. Ginger Wolf did add, do we not consider Sprong skilled? You actually think Daniel Sprong is the most highly skilled prospect.
Well, I think Trevor Zegras is the the highest skilled prospect. Yeah. But of the kind of 20 and above guys, it's Daniel Sprong.
Yeah.
It's Daniel Sprong. And I mean, just even looking at it from where were they drafted perspective, if you look at Daniel Sprong's career, he was a 2nd round pick. So he's still, and if he was probably better defensively, I think he has the talent of a first round pick.
Probably.
He's just not there. There's obviously some issues there. But if you look at you were talking about Chicago's rebuild. So a year ago or 2 years ago now in 2018, they got Adam Boqvist 8th overall.
Yep.
And he's already looking, to me at least, just kind of watching him play. I haven't really dug too deep into his numbers, although I don't think they're terrible. He's already making somewhat of an impact at the NHL level.
That was their first top 10 pick, right? The rest of them were
exactly.
The previous years they made the playoffs. I believe.
And then in 2019 they draft Kirby Dach, third overall.
Yep, they won the lottery there.
Exactly. So for Anaheim, if we look at the Chicago model for Anaheim, they're following it to somewhat of a T. I mean, they flipped Marcus Pettersson to take a swing on a guy like Daniel Sprong. In a way, the Hawks did that with the Dylan Strome situation, and then they draft 8th overall and get Boqvist, and then this past summer they get Dach. The Ducks got Trevor Zegras 9th overall last summer. I would imagine they're going to be picking inside the top 10 again. So this will be another opportunity for them to get another kind of key piece. And then from there, I think you're looking at a nice next wave.
Yeah.
Now, there's no guarantees, of course. I mean, we still don't know for sure what any of these guys are going to look like, including Trevor Zegras, but that's how you start. You've got to start somewhere.
Yep. And I think kind of as we're talking about, because I think what this season has shown is this is not a retool. This is a straight rebuild. The Ducks
it is, but the funny thing is that it's like an accidental rebuild.
Yeah,
I don't think this was.
No, it was meant. They were meant
to
be competitive this year, and they just aren't. But I think what we're seeing from the kids so far this year is that they all seem to be more complementary pieces.
They're all going to be NHL players, but we just don't know what the ceiling is going to be.
Yeah, I think as of right now, it almost looks as all of them are going to be around second liners with maybe one or two.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's what we've been saying.
True.
It's what we've been saying. Yeah, they're going to be good middle six players.
Yep,
and that's totally fine.
Yep, and now you need to fill in the upper end.
Exactly. You need. I mean, it's like. I mean, there's this whole debate that's been going on in hockey for the last couple of years, it seems, but it's strong link versus weak link, and for example, a team like the Canadiens right now, which is facing its own mortality as a retooling team that's now lost. Well, they just won tonight, but they had lost 8 straight before, and their playoff hopes are crumbling. Is that they try to thread that needle of being competitive while rebuilding at the same time, and they did that without any true star talent, and not really. I mean, there's not really any stars coming through the system either. So can you really win that way? And it's the same question you can ask about the Ducks. Right now, the way that they have it with no true stars, at some point you need that strong link. You need that kind of key piece that can overcome any deficiencies or a lot of deficiencies on the outside. And no pressure, Trevor Zegras, but you're kind of it, or at least right now you're it. And so I think he can be that. He hasn't shown anything at all to make us think otherwise, but we just won't know until we see him play in the NHL.
Yep, and so 2 more things I want to hit on.
Mm-hmm.
Troy Terry, when he comes back into the lineup, what do you do? Because I think you and I are both very much in the camp that says Daniel Sprong should not come out of this lineup in any situation at this point. So Troy Terry comes back. Obviously, as of right now, Jakob Silfverberg's out. That gives him a nice spot to kind of go into on the right wing with Rickard Rakell kind of taking a right wing spot and can flip back to the left. But when everyone's healthy, what do you do? When Jakob Silfverberg comes back, what do you do? Now, granted, Richie will probably be out for a little bit more, so maybe there's a little bit kind of easier thing to do. Maybe you put Sprong on the left side and he plays there like we saw last year, I believe, for a bit. Maybe that's the simple solution. But what do you think that they should do?
I don't know. I really don't know what they're going to do. I mean, like you said, they're in a bit of a puzzle right now because once Nick Ritchie comes back and Troy Terry gets back, you have wings that just got to move out of the lineup. And looking at the Ducks' 2 wings right now, you've got on the right side Sprong, Rakell, Cautious, Rowney, and that's with Silfverberg out of the lineup. And then on the left side, you've got Henrique, Comtois, Jones, Delorier, and that's with Ritchie out of the lineup. So I don't know. I really don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that part of the answer there is Comtois goes back to the AHL. Maybe Jones goes back to the AHL as well. and you just give them that stretch run, and you have Richie in there. They have to find a way so that Terry and Sprong can both be in the lineup.
Yes.
I just think that clearly, no matter what you think of Troy Terry in terms of how good he is or whatever, I think he's been better than Max Comtois this season.
Yep.
And so he should probably be in there over Comtois. And I don't really care if it's on his off wing or, on the left side or the right side. The better player should be in there. Now, At some point, will the Isaac Lundestrom experiment end as this team's second line center? Maybe that's the piece that's the domino that needs to fall.
I think that happens and Henrique goes back to center. I think that's what needs to happen.
If Henrique goes back to center, then you have some opportunities to kind of put Terry and Sprong in there.
And
because to me, Sprong just has to be in the lineup, at least for the foreseeable future.
Ginger Wolf does mention that he thinks that Terry should go back to center. I do not foresee that happening. Troy Terry has not played center since very early on in his college career.
Although he still shows up as a center on different stats websites. Cracks me up.
That's because he was drafted as a center technically, but at some point that will get removed. Troy Terry has not played center since early on in college.
I would be curious to see it.
Really?
Yeah, because why not? I mean,
fair.
This team has absolutely nothing to lose right now, and why not experiment a little bit? I mean, part of it, there's ego at play. I mean, if you put Sam Steele at the wing and Troy Terry at center, I don't know how either of those guys takes it, in terms of, okay, Terry maybe feels a little uncomfortable because his friend is getting basically the downvote, and Steele, I don't know how he feels about that. But I don't think Steele right now, I don't know how much it's benefiting him to play at center in the NHL at the very least. And so with Troy Terry, I would just be curious to see it because I've talked about this before, but I think it's just kind of a challenging fit when you have a winger who's a pass-first playmaker type. And I think that's what Troy Terry is. I think the best version of Troy Terry is going to be some type of good playmaker. He's not really showing any tendency to be a shooter, which is fine. You don't have to be a shooter to be some great player. But I think on the wing, generally teams want guys who are firing it from those different wing positions. And so Troy Terry has a decent skating stride, is more of a natural playmaker. I mean, he kind of plays like a center. And so I would be curious to see him play in the middle, because then if you had Getzlaf, Henrique, and Terry as your top three centers, I just think that would be interesting, and I would be curious to see it. But the problem is this organization is clearly invested in Sam Steele being their third line center, and Isaac Lundestrom, for whatever reason, is just the de facto second line center. And again, none of those things are wrong because, again, there's nothing to really play for in this season. But it's just interesting nevertheless.
Remember over summer when there were some people saying that Sam Steele would be the number one center and Getzlaf the number two this year? And Getzlaf had to accept that?
Yeah. Yeah. That hasn't aged well.
No, it has not aged. Sorry.
I feel like I hate to say it, but Sam Steele has been one of the most overrated prospects in a long time. Not because he is bad, but because people, for whatever reason, decided at some point that he was just this NHL-ready top six center.
Yeah.
And I don't really know where that came from, but he just hasn't been that at all. And that's not to say he'll never be that, but yeah, this whole idea that he would become their first line center. I guess he had a good stretch at the end of last year. Maybe that's what I'm forgetting.
That is why.
Maybe.
But you know who he was in between? Silfverberg and Raquel.
Yeah. So it's like, hey, those guys, they if you want your the perception of you to go up, just try to get between Silfverberg and Raquel. Well, they'll get you there.
I think also what this shows is just how hard it is to be a number one center in the league, and the fact that Ryan Getzlaf, like the person that's going to take that mantle from Getzlaf is going to be Zegras.
Maybe.
Should be.
Ought to be. The hope is.
Hope.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah. I mean, really, that's kind of the benefit of this Ducks center lineup right now in terms of their prospects, is that one of these guys should become an NHL center, like a top 3 NHL center.
Yeah. And the other thing I wanted to hit on, though, was what you had pointed out to me with Elliot Friedman mentioning at the end of their hot stove.
Yes. So tonight on the Sportsnet broadcast, so this is a 4-minute long clip that I retweeted if you want to go check that out. It's a 4-minute long clip. And of course, only the last 20 seconds are actually dedicated to the Ducks.
Sounds about right.
Which I found kind of funny.
Sounds
yeah,
about
exactly.
right.
Yeah, it's pretty on par with just about everything
Yeah.
in terms of their national coverage.
Yep.
But so Elliot Friedman reporting that the Ducks have said that they're open for business, saying that they are willing to take on a bad contract in exchange for, to take on a future asset, basically. So, hey, we'll take your bad money, but you have to attach some type of future. So like a young prospect or something like that, or a pick.
Yep.
I'm paraphrasing, but that's the gist of it. There's really not a whole lot to it, which we've talked about that on this show multiple times, that the Ducks should be looking to get creative in terms of their rebuild, buying yourself as many lottery tickets as possible in the form of draft picks, in the form of prospects. And I think that's one of the, if you're a Ducks fan and you want to see this rebuild done right, this is probably one of the better news items you've heard in a while, I would say.
Yep. And the thing for the Ducks of note here is that they only have a projected cap space of $2 million by the end of the season. But the benefit to them is that is without Kessler and Eves on LTIR. So they do have that in their back pocket, which basically adds up to about $10 million that they can go over the cap if they do take on bad money. They also could look at trading a guy like, for instance, let's say they trade Josh Manson out and they are trading him to a team that is tight up against the cap. They could take a bad money contract back, which then elevates the prospect that they take back, because the trade value essentially goes down from it essentially affects the trade value from the other side and makes the piece of the Ducks get better because they are taking that bad money. So you're able to kind of make it work in that sense. So it's encouraging that I'm here that they're basically mentioning that the Ducks are open for business. The only thing is I'll believe it when I see it type of deal, because the guys that the Ducks can move are not guys that I'd necessarily, let me rephrase that. The guys that the Ducks should be looking to move are not the guys that I would necessarily expect them to move.
Well, we'll touch on this in the next podcast when we have more time to prepare. But I'm just curious to know, like, what is the contract that's out there that's going to get moved for that a team is willing to attach a future to because they just want to get off it? I mean, we'll just have to see. We need to do more digging there. If someone has a suggestion, hit us up. But we'll talk about that as the season rolls on and as we approach the trade deadline.
Yep. And so let's jump in. We got a couple questions, but we'll get to just a couple of them this time because we're running up on some time here. But for those of you watching the YouTube stream of this show, yes, we are on YouTube. You can search for us by searching for the AC Pod, and you will find us on there. Also, we obviously have the recorded version of this on Spotify or any of your favorite podcast services like Apple Podcasts. But our real fun thing that we do is the Twitch stream. You can find us at twitch.tv/ACPod, which is where you can join in and watch us live. And you can also help support the show. You can interact with us in the Twitch chat. We are watching the Twitch chat as it's going. And you can help support the show. If you have Amazon Prime, you do get Twitch Prime. You get one free sub each and every month. You do have to hit that subscribe button after 30 days. It should be above Felix's head if you're watching on the desktop version. Felix, point up. Felix, point up. There you go. And you can help support the show. With that, you get special emotes in the chat, special badges next to your name. I'm looking at adding a new emote just for you, Shane. And we will prioritize your chat or your questions on a busier night. So we've got this one from Heyo D-Flow. If the Ducks, as expected, are a lottery team, how patient will Murray/ownership be with Eakins going forward? Could he survive another lottery year next season?
So I think context is really important here. If the Ducks finish where we assume they're going to finish near the bottom, I don't know how high the expectations are going to be next year. I think that this year is the season that the Ducks needed in terms of really rearranging expectations. Because last year, we kind of forget now, it seemed all so predestined, but this team had a veteran lineup going to the season and suffered a lot of injuries. And so this idea was that, okay, if this team just gets healthy going into next year, they have a chance to push for the playoffs. And this year they've had injuries again, but they've been mostly healthy and they are nowhere near the playoffs. So I think next year the franchise goes into the season with maybe a bit more of a accurate set of expectations.
Yeah.
We don't really know what their internal expectations were, but this is just kind of using our best guesses here, educated guesses, of course.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, though, that if the Ducks next season don't show any signs of improvement, so you still see the kids not really making a big impact, you still kind of see these floundering games that they're just not even close, then, it's not so much where they finish in the standings to me, it's just how they do it. And I think that if the Ducks continue to show no improvement, then that's going to be a situation where maybe Dallas Eakins gets the door. But I think it would really take just a horrible season for that to happen. I think he gets the 2 years. He gets the 2 years.
I think he gets 3 seasons, or
I think he gets at least the 2, right? And then the year after will be the year 3 will be the telling one, because he might not finish that whole season.
Fair.
But we'll see. I mean, I really want to see him get through these next 2 years, because I just want to see him coach a good team.
Well, that was the knock on him in Edmonton, was the first year was not great there, which due to kind of similar circumstances to now, it happens. But he started to really turn it around in his second year, and the results just weren't following, even though the metrics were underlying numbers and metrics were good.
Yeah. Well, because every time Dallas Eakins joins the NHL as a coach, he gets handed a rebuilding team. So that's tough.
Kind of a shame. Ginger Wolf asks, question, is Goodbranson safe approaching the trade deadline / expansion draft? So I want to add.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I want to add to this question a little bit. So we were really frustrated, or I was really frustrated. You thought it was a bad trade, getting Goodbranson, and I agreed with that and was frustrated at them getting him because of his cap hit, different things like that. Do you think his play so far this year has changed opinion on him to where he has some trade value now?
Well, teams were always willing to trade for Eric Goodbranson. Well, Eric Goodbranson always finds a home wherever he...
But if you remember, the Ducks traded absolutely nothing for him.
Well, so here's the thing. I think that he has worked his way into a situation where he could be a really good double rental for a team, because he's got one more year left on his contract after this year at $4 million a year. And I think Eric Goodbranson has been a nice story for the Ducks. He's played really well next to Cam Fowler.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, where does he actually fit into this team's long-term plans? I'll answer my own question. He doesn't. He's 28. He's going to be a UFA next summer. And I just don't see him really fitting into that next wave. So he does have value, though, as a trade chip. And I think he's played his way into a situation where you're still not going to get a premium asset for him, but I think you could get something.
Yeah.
And people overrate the idea that, okay, you need to hit a home run with every trade. We've talked about this before. It's the accumulation of assets that gets you to where you need to go, where you can either make another trade or just kind of buy yourself more bites at the apple. And so they should really be considering trading him, because he's kind of in the same boat as Manson, where they're both the same age. They're both on very movable contracts. And I think the perception of them league wide is pretty good. So, I mean, they should probably trade them both.
Yeah. Yep. Agreed with that completely. So that's going to do it for the night. Like I said, we're kind of blitzing through some questions, but I did want to make mention that Kempafu resubbed for 11 months. And so shout out to him. And I did want to make mention, we have a new Apple Podcast review from Australia.
Oh,
so came in on January 8th. From Baba Woody, 5 stars, said, brilliant. Love listening to the lads go through the games. Games are during my workday in Australia, so hearing the recaps is great as I get more opinions than just those via the radio or NHL TV broadcasts. Keep up the great work. So thank you very much, and hope you are doing okay. And everyone, I realized I mentioned this last show, but with all the fires in Australia, we do have a fair amount of listeners down there. So I hope you all are safe.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, there's nothing I can really say or do, but just seriously, that whole country's in our thoughts, and just looking at those pictures, it's just incredible.
Yeah,
how bad it's gotten. So thank you for the review. Thank you for the kind words that you would find time of your day to do that in these times. Okay, so that is going to be a wrap for today's show. Thank you everyone for participating in the live broadcast. Like Jake already mentioned, we do that for each show that we do. Right now, we're doing about 2 shows a week. So we try to let you know as far in advance as we can when we're going to be going live. Now, a couple different ways that you can support the show. We do have a Patreon page. That's patreon.com/acpod. 2 ways in which you can support us on there. For $1 a month pledge, you get access to our patrons only Discord chat, which is a lot of fun. We do that during games. We just kind of banter, talk about different hockey related topics. Sometimes Jake will complain about different things. So it's a lot of fun.
Wait. Me? Just me?
I get to chat about Ilya Kovalchuk scoring a game winner tonight. Just different things like that. It's a fun little kind of just shooting the breeze type chat. For $5 a month though, you get access to 2 bonus episodes of the show. So we're going to get into different topics league wide. We're going to go more in depth on the Ducks. The most recent episode we did an hour on the Ducks last decade. And then on top of that, within the same episode, another hour reviewing the Rise of Skywalker. So we're just all over the place.
Have you finished Mando yet?
No. Maybe I'll do that tonight.
Yeah.
Maybe
do that
that'll be
tonight,
my
seeing
homework
as we're
assignment.
planning on recording a Patreon episode tomorrow. So we can
I thought
talk
it was
about
Monday.
it.
Anyway.
Well, maybe sometime this week you'll get a new Patreon episode.
In the near future, we will be releasing our first episode of the decade. So, yes, that is something that you should do if you enjoy this show, if you enjoy kind of the banter, the back and forth. But if you don't have time for that, if you don't have the money, fair enough. Here's another way you can support, like Jake already mentioned. Just go to Apple Podcasts, leave a rating and a review. It honestly helps the show tremendously. We always appreciate the kind words, and it just kind of keeps our finger on the pulse a little bit of how we're doing. Make sure to check us out on social media. So Jake is on there at Reindeer Games 95. Why did I say 95? 91.
Yeah,
Good
91.
Lord.
Wow.
I say 91 every show.
Wow.
And I'm sorry.
So I suddenly got 4 years younger?
Yeah, you should be happy about that, right?
Yeah, sure.
I don't know if you'd want to be 23, 24. Anyway.
24.
Yeah.
About to be 25 in that situation.
Reindeer Games 91. Go follow him. Do it for all the right reasons, for the hockey tweets, the wrestling tweets. Just do it.
The
Just
soccer
go follow
tweets.
him.
The soccer tweets aren't coming as of late, seeing as Tottenham have not been fun. They lost to Liverpool 1-0 today. I hate Jose Mourinho. This sucks.
Very good. I'm on Twitter at Felix_Sicard, my first and last name. I've got an article up right now at thefourthperiod.com about Fowler and Goodbranson. I should do a follow-up to that about Goodbranson trade value, but I don't know how well that would go over. So, yeah, go check that out. Make sure to check out AnaheimCalling.com, at Anaheim Calling on Twitter. We're also on YouTube. We're on Spotify, all the different outlets. Make sure to check us out there. That'll do it for tonight's show, and we will talk to you at the next episode. Thanks a lot.
Bye.